Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this first workshop on the Federal Voting Assistance Program workshop, the first one, I believe, in Manila since 2012. I'd like to thank you and congratulate you for volunteering and being willing to serve as a federal voter assistant to people that are interested in timely voting opportunities. As you know, for an American citizen, the most important privilege we have is the hard-fought right to vote. So everyone has a responsibility to vote. Everyone has a responsibility to help someone who may not know how to go about doing it and to assist in the process. We at the U.S. Embassy, particularly the American Citizen Services Section, ACS, is here to assist you so that you can assist other Americans in this large, diverse American community in the Philippines. I'm going to do some trivia here that was written for me, not that I know it myself, but did you know that many recent U.S. elections have been decided by a margin smaller than the number of ballots cast by military and overseas voters? All states are required to count every absentee ballot as long as it is valid and reaches local election officials by the absentee ballot receipt deadline. And the 2008 Senate race in what state was decided by 312 votes? Every vote count. Can someone tell me which state that was?
Florida.
Lisa hit it. Minnesota. But state officials rejected 12,000 absentee ballots that were invalid. The Democratic challenger, Mr. Al Franken, victory over the Republican incumbent, Mr. Coleman, helped give the Democrats the 60 votes necessary to pass the health care bill. This workshop provides training so that all of the absentee ballots are valid. As I said before, U.S. Embassy Manila is committed to ensuring that every ballot counts. To reiterate, voting is an important responsibility, and the U.S. Embassy takes pride in playing an important role in facilitating that process. The Embassy urges every American citizen to register and to participate in this important aspect of democracy. We look forward to working with your organizations and others who are not represented in nonpartisan voter registration and voter information efforts. The Federal Voting Assistance Program is a valuable resource for American citizens overseas. They help people register to vote and provide election information. The Federal Voter Assistance Program website, which is listed, or it will soon be listed, yes, here it is, fvap.gov, really is a one-stop shop for almost any question on voting. I think everyone knows that we at the Embassy will collect absentee ballots for forwarding to the U.S. when and if people would like to leave them there. And I think Mr. Weidman, who I'll introduce in a minute, will give you more information on that. In the meantime, I'd like to thank you for sending the FVAP, for sending a team and materials and hosting this in-person training with a question and answer session. I'd like to ask Catherine Fisher, whom you all probably have already met, but this is Catherine. Catherine is the voting assistance officer at the Embassy, and I hope all of you will consider her a primary contact for the Embassy Voting Assistance Program. Thank you again to all of you for volunteering, for taking the time to come and get trained to support your fellow American citizens as they exercise their right and responsibility to vote. In the meantime, I'd like to introduce Mr. Scott Wiedemann, who is from the Federal Voting Assistance Program from the Department of Defense in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? I'm not going to use a microphone, I think. Can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So, we got a great introduction there. A lot of the things I was going to talk about, she already touched on, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on that as well. But what we basically want to do today is let you know the basic part of the process, It's a relatively simple process, but there are issues, obviously, for folks overseas that can come up that can make it a little more difficult, and that's why we urge everyone to start as early as possible. So we want to go through that process. We want to let you know the tools and resources that are available to you, and not just as American citizens, as individuals, but to help other people so they're able to participate in the process as well. And then let you know how to get a hold of us or how to contact folks in the state should there be issues that come up. You don't have to be an election expert. You don't have to be an expert in it. We have our staff that does the work with the states to find out all of the information from the states to find out, make sure that we have everything up to date and accurate, so that when someone uses our guidebook or our website, everything should go flawlessly, and we have everything as it should be for the individual and their state. Now, once they send the form in, the state might have a question on the address that the person's using or something else, and that's when the person can email the state and talk to them about that. And if there are issues after that, they can contact us either through our email address or the toll-free numbers that are listed on the inside back cover of the guidebook. And there are a toll-free fax and phone number from the Philippines that people can call, and they'll reach our office directly. Now, we're awake, and have office hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays, but you can still call our office and leave a message should you have that, or if you email us, typically while you're asleep, then we'll be able to work on that. So, but please avail yourselves and have folks avail yourselves of that. And information that you might send out to your clubs or organizations include our website and the toll-free numbers from the Philippines, so people can contact us. Let me make sure I got this working the right way. There we go. Okay. So it is an important election year. It's not a presidential election year, but the entire House of Representatives and a third of the U.S. Senate are up for election. So that could easily change the balance of power in either of those bodies, which of course affect the laws that get passed and introduced. So it is an important election year, and people should take part in that process. There's also governorships in many states and local bonds and referendum. Each individual should decide for themselves what elections they want to take part in as far as state or local elections. As far as tax purposes, it's a big question that comes up about paying state income tax. Of course, everybody has to pay federal income tax and in their IRS forms, but from a state income tax level, if you're only using the address that you had in your state of residence for voting purposes, then you should not be charged any state income tax for that state. If you have property tax or some other taxes like that, of course you have to pay for your property tax, but for income tax from the state, you shouldn't have to pay that if you're just using it for the federal offices. And remember that the states are the entities in the U.S. that carry out the elections. We don't have what's called the federal elections in the United States. The U.S. government does not hold elections, so people can't just show up at an embassy or consulate like many countries. You hear about an election going on in Indonesia. Indonesians show up at the embassy or consulate and vote a ballot. That's because there's one single federal ballot that everyone in the country, every citizen in the country would be voting, but that's not the case in the U.S. In order to vote in the U.S., you have to have a relationship with a state, because the states carry out the elections. And the states have given, historically, the privilege for folks to vote absentee. But under the law that's administered by our office, you have the right to vote for those federal offices, which include President, U.S. Senate, and U.S. House of Representatives. So it is an important election year, and people should be encouraged to vote. Now, alluded to was this myth that absentee ballots only count in close elections. And you may have heard that in the media. The only time that you hear about absentee ballots in the media is when it is a close election. Let's say there's a county that has 50,000 total voters in it, and it's election night and the polls close, and immediately the media comes knocking on the door and says, who's the winner, right? So they look at the poll site tally and they see that one candidate has 40,000 votes. So they say preliminary results are that candidate A is the winner, and the media runs off and prints their story. But if it's 24,000 to 24,000, then they'll tell the media, we can't give you any results until we look at the absentee votes. So then the media runs off and prints that they'll have to look at the absentee votes. But in either case, over the next week to a month or however long that state has, they do canvassing and recounts until they get the final tally. And all the ballots that came in, as long as they were properly cast and in a timely manner, then they do count for the election. So, and a vote that comes in from overseas or anywhere as absentee vote counts exactly the same as one that was cast at the poll site. So don't let anyone tell you, oh, I'm not going to bother voting absentee because it only counts in close elections. And again, which was alluded to, there are lots of close elections that have occurred recently by far, and the winning margin is far less than those that were cast by overseas citizens and military voters. In fact, and this is talking about the 2005 Virginia Attorney General race, just last year's 2013 Virginia Attorney General race, statewide election, over 2 million votes cast, came down to just over 800 votes again, so like 0.001% of the votes. So it does count, and there are a lot of close elections. There's a very close electorate in the United States right now, so it's important for people to participate. So the law that we were talking about today is called the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, and it's just what it says. Any member of the armed forces, their family members, voting age family members, whether they're one county away, a few states away, or anywhere around the world, are able to vote under this, are protected under this law. And any U.S. citizen who's outside of the territorial limits of the United States is also able to vote under this law. And that includes the 50 states and 5 territories: Guam, American Samoa, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and D.C. are also considered equal to states as far as this act is concerned. The Northern Marianas Islands do not have, are not protected by this act, even though they do have a member in Congress. So that's something Congress has looked at a couple times as to whether or not they're going to add that to the list of what's considered states for this law. So we want to make sure people understand that just because they're outside of the U.S. doesn't mean they can't vote. They can continue voting as long as they're outside of the United States and they're protected by this act, and the state must allow them to participate for those federal offices. So this is a slide about the State Department and the structure there. For American citizen groups and organizations, you need to know that the ACS unit at the embassies or consulates or posts are there to help you. They are not a distribution point for materials, though. So if it's Democrats Abroad or another organization is going to have a registration drive and you want hard copies of the forms, call our office and we can send them to you directly. The State Department orders their own supplies and purchases them for folks walking up to the ACS windows and getting assistance. So they'll give 1 or 2 forms out to an individual or their family, but they're not there to give you 1,000 forms for a drive. But we do have all those materials and resources. Everything is also, of course, on our website. FAP.gov is the catch-all for everything as well. And we do have other pamphlets and forms as well. I noticed just outside in the lobby there was a rack with a bunch of different pamphlets on different information. Something like this would fit perfectly on a rack like that. It's a very basic information about the absentee voting process, and of course our website is on there so people can go and get contact with their state and get the forms that they need. So if you have a place where Americans congregate, we can send you a box of 1,000 of these forms, and you can put them out there and have them so people can pick them up. You know, generally, if you're at an event or something, people don't necessarily want to sit down at that moment for 15 minutes to fill out their form. But if they take one of these home, or the little plastic cards that you all have in front of you there, we can send you a box of those as well. And they can take those home and then just have it sitting on their desk or their computer, and then when they're ready, they can go to the website and go through the process. So we have lots of those materials and all kinds of stuff on our website as well. So if you have printing publications that you produce for your organization, you don't have to necessarily create a new article or a new wording or new verbiage. We have all kinds of info sheets, Q's and A's, questions and answers that you can put and just copy paste directly from our website. It's accurate and up to date, so you don't have to worry about researching it or anything else. You can just put those right into there. Put the website, your local information, contact information, so people can get a hold of you. I say utilize it, localize it, plagiarize it, because there's nothing in there that's not public information. So go ahead and use it as much as you'd like. So the website is the key for everything. So we've redesigned the website just in the last year, and we had some studies done, usability tests done on it for the old site to see where people ran into roadblocks as they went through the process, and then we worked to fix those through the redesign. So the new site, actually, this box here is where voters get started, and it has a state drop-down, so you click on that box and drop down, and you click on your state, Alabama, whatever your state is, and instead of worrying about all the different state rules and regulations, it just asks you the question specific for your state. So if it's Alabama, it'll only ask you the information that's required to register to vote and request a ballot in Alabama, and then it'll give you a PDF of the form and the instructions on how to return it. But additionally on the site are voting assistance officer or help a voter sections where you as a person assisting voters can go, and all these materials that you see here are all there available in PDF. So if you have an emergency and we can't get something to you in a day or two, you can at least get things printed out in smaller numbers if you need. And then the guidebook itself, for those of you who have done voting assistance in the past as well, you'll recognize the book at least, but we have a new cover obviously this year. This is the compendium of all the different state rules and regulations. We work very closely with the states to ensure that we have the most up-to-date information so that when someone uses the supplies and the services that we provide, we're sure that it's accurate and up-to-date. So you can count on, if someone using our website goes there and goes through the process, that everything that state requires is on that form and will be on the form when they send it in. Once again, the state might have questions on it or need some to double check a few of the things that the person sends in, but at least you know the required information has been provided. Every state in this book is laid out the same way. It starts out with the calendar, the registration deadline, ballot request deadline, and the voted ballot deadline, and when those have to be returned. And then it goes through a series of very common questions, and each state is laid out exactly the same way. So as a person helping someone to register to vote, you'll find the same question for each state. For instance, you might want to know about primary elections. What do I need to do if I want to change my party for primary elections? There's a block 2, and for every state it'll have the exact instructions on what I need to do. Or does my state need a witness when I fill out the ballot? There's a spot on there that'll tell you the witness requirements. Now, good news is that no state requires notary anymore. So there's no state that will reject a ballot because a notary is not on there. There are only a couple states that actually ask for witnesses, and generally they could be almost anybody. It doesn't have to necessarily be an American citizen. It's hard for the states, or I've never heard of a situation where states have actually followed through to try to contact the witness anyway. But just so you know, it's only a couple states that require that, so that's a good thing. But if the state does require it, the instructions will be in the guidebook on how to fill out that federal write-in ballot, which we'll talk about in a moment, and on the website as people are guided through that process. Most of the book are addresses for states. The very front part of the book is the basic absentee voting process, and then the back of the book are a bunch of resources that you all can use with the toll-free numbers and the primary election schedule and that sort of thing. And we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. But the center of the book is all of the states and their rules and regs, and then we have every address for all the counties in the country, as well as their fax numbers and their email addresses. So this book is accurate and up to date as of, I believe, September or October last fall. But once a book is printed, it's already out of date, and that's true for a lot of things, but this one especially because of the tens or the thousands of addresses that we have in here and information in that regard. So the stuff on the website is always accurate and up to date. And if anyone does send a form into one of the addresses in this book, it will be good for at least using the mail forwarding process in the U.S. It'll get there, but it may be delayed a day or two if it is a county that's changed their address. They don't change that frequently, but every year there's always a few. But if you use the online tool, those are kept up to date as we go in real time. So if there is a change, that'll always be kept up to date. All right, so the basic process for absentee voting is first, you need to register to vote, and that's true for anybody stateside or overseas. You need to let that county know that you are a citizen that lives in that county and you want to participate in the voting process for that county. And to do it absentee, the federal form that guarantees your ability to do that is this federal postcard application form, and everyone's got a copy of the form. It's also in the front of the book. If you ever need to make a copy of it, it's in there. And of course, it's on our website. If you need to print out blank copies, say that you're going to do a voter registration drive, we can provide, as I said, we can send you the cardstock versions of the forms, but we can also send you, or you can also print it off on the website. So you want to complete this form. This is the part of the process where by using this form, you're telling your county, hey, I'm a resident of your county. I'm not going to be there for the election. I need you to send a ballot to me where I am. So whatever's on this sheet of paper is what the county is going to use to determine whether or not you meet the residency requirements of a person in that county, and then figure out how to get the ballot to you so that you can vote it and get it back in time before the ballot deadline expires or passes. So you want to be sure that everything that you put on here is as accurate and up to date as possible, and they're able to get that. So once they have this, they will process it and then put you on the list to receive a ballot. The states are required by federal law that if, for whatever reason, they reject this form, they're required to notify you and tell you that it's been rejected because they didn't have birth date or whatever it is that they needed on there. But they are not required to tell you if it's accepted. So there are some states that have an online registration status that you can check, but what we recommend is, if your state doesn't have that, is to send an email directly to the county to say, hey, I sent in a form to you a couple weeks ago, just want to be sure you got it and figure out find out what the status is of that registration request, and they'll answer you and let you know, oh, you're good to go, you'll get your ballot at a certain time, but otherwise they'll contact you and let you know. But don't wait until right up on the election or the day before the election where you don't see your ballot and then call them up and say, hey, I sent my form in 6 months ago, where's my ballot? And then find out there was some glitch or something happened and they never received it. So it's always good to follow up with anything that you send in. And then once they send you, so they'll send you the ballot to where you are, and you can request it to be sent to you by email or fax. All the states are required by federal law to provide the ballot electronically. So they have to send it to you. I think all states now will send it to you as a PDF attachment, or give you a link to a website where you can go to the state website and pull it down. And then you print it out, and then you'll vote it and cast it, and then sign the front of the ballot sheet so they have the signature to compare with the registration signature they have on file. So, so they're required to do that electronically. Also, they're required to provide the ballot 45 days prior to the election. So for the November election, we're talking about mid-September where the ballots will be going out. As long as you've requested your ballot earlier in the year, they're required by federal law to send that ballot out 45 days before that November election. And it's true for all elections for federal office. So the primary elections that you have listing there, 45 days before each of those dates, the states will be sending out, at least for the federal offices. New York does have a separate federal office ballot and state office ballot. But for at least the federal offices, they'll be sending those ballots out 45 days before the election because they're required to by federal law. And the Department of Justice is the enforcement body for that to ensure the states are carrying that out properly. So they'll send the ballot to you, and then you want to vote that as soon as possible after you get it. We recommend that you vote it and get it back in as soon as possible because you want to ensure there's enough time for it to transit back. And there are many states now that will allow you to actually send the voted ballot back by email as well. Arizona, you can upload your PDF of your voted ballot to their state server. So then you're done after you do that. So the state-specific instructions are both in the guidebook and on our website as well. So when you print out the package, the PDF package will have all the instructions on what your state does allow and how to do that. There are some states as well for registration that you don't even need to send a form in for registration because the state has your signature already on file in the Department of Motor Vehicle offices. If you have a driver's license, that's how they would have that. And then if you go to their website, give them some information about yourself, they match that up with the record on the DMV or the Department of Motor Vehicles, and then you're registered to vote. You don't need to send in any form at all until you send the ballot in, but they do have that signature already on file. That's a few states that are starting to do that. Maybe more will do that down the road. We're not sure at this point, but we always want to shoot for the lowest common denominator as far as what the state's allowed you to do. So for registration purposes, the shortest or the longest registration deadline before the election is 30 days. So if you want to be sure you're going to be registered to vote in any state, as long as you have your form in 30 days before the election, then you're guaranteed that at least they'll have the form and they'll process it for that particular election. If your form goes in after 30 days, there are states that will allow you to register 2 weeks before the election, a week before the election, or even closer to the election day. But you don't want to count on that because one person might be from one state where that's allowed, but then they talk to another American citizen and then find out, oh, I had to have mine in 30 days before the election. So it's very important to usually follow, to get stuff started early, which is why we recommend that this form be sent in January of every year. And we say every year because even though in 2015 there's no federal elections scheduled, there could still be members of Congress that pass away or leave office to spend more time with their family or whatever it might be. So there's going to be special elections. And if you have your form in there in January, then when those special elections occur, you'll get the ballot sent to you, and you don't have to worry about hearing on the news, and you might not hear about the election until the day of the election that it's already happening, and then it's too late. So it's a good idea to get that in early. Now, you might be in a situation where you have properly filled out your registration form, you know you're registered, and the ballot's on its way to you, and then you find out that you're going to be in a different place for a few weeks in September, October timeframe when the ballots will be going out, either by email or by mail, and you're not going to have access to getting that. So in that case, we have what's called the federal write-in absentee ballot. It's like the emergency or backup ballot, which allows you to vote and cast ballots for the candidates of your choice and send that in, and at least you'll know you have that ballot in, and you don't have to worry about the state ballot not getting to you. That's another excuse buster. People say, I didn't vote because I'd never got my ballot from my state. Well, the ballot's already on our website right now. You have hard copies there in front of you. So nobody can say I didn't vote because I didn't get my ballot from their state. At least for federal offices, you have the backup ballot. It's already there. We talked about sending in the FPCA once a year. And then, of course, if you move at any time within the Philippines or to another country, you want to let them know that you've changed that address. They need to know what your current mailing address is. The federal write-in ballot, we're going to go through that in more detail in a few minutes. And we talked about the guidebook, and it's a state-by-state compendium. Okay, and assisting citizens. So this is kind of what the online tool and assistant that we have on our website for completing the form. The citizen will go there and click their state on this box, and then each state is laid out exactly like, or very similar to the way the guidebook page is laid out. The first thing you'll see, that those, and it doesn't really show up on this screen, but that little kind of box in the upper right side are the election deadlines. So the dates for the elections will be right there, the first thing you'll see. And then underneath, there's 3 columns, and this next slide will show those a little larger. The left column is registering to vote and requesting your ballot. The next column is getting the ballot or getting that federal write-in absentee ballot that we talked about. And the third column is checking that voter registration or the status of your ballot that you've returned, whether or not it got there in time. Now, there's many states that are starting to provide forms online or those online registration that we talked about. Anytime a state has something specifically created for overseas voters to use, we're going to put that tool as the first thing on our list, because it's much better for that individual to deal directly back and forth with their state than to come use a DOD form or something else. That way it closes one more loop in the process, and it might make things move quicker. If the state does not have one of those tools, then the tool for our online assistant will be the first thing that you'll see. Likewise with the ballot, if the state has a ballot tool or the availability to download the ballot through their website, that'll be the first thing listed. And then our federal write-in ballot was the next tool. But if the state does not have it, then you won't see that first column. Everything else will be shifted up. And the state does have, about half the states have ability to check the status of either your registration or your voted ballot online as well. So it's basically click print and send. You go through, fill out the information in each of the boxes, name and whatever the information that's required specifically for your state will be requested. And it takes you right through the entire form. And if you don't fill out a box that is required by the state, it'll give you a little reminder like, hey, you didn't provide this information. And it may be that the individual doesn't want to put their Social Security number, type it on their computer. They want to print out the form first and then handwrite it on because they're worried somebody might take it from the computer. That's okay. You can ignore the reminder, but it will remind you that, hey, this is required for your state. And then it'll give you this screen which asks you to print out a PDF package. So that PDF package will include the complete printed form typed. And the local election officials love the fact that it's typed, because for anybody who's ever had to work in a place where you receive forms from people, it's handwritten. You know that it can be very difficult sometimes to read handwriting. So the fact that it's typed is wonderful. The main thing you need to do is remember to sign it, or if you're helping other folks, make sure that they sign it. Now that PDF package will have the completed form plus a couple pages of instructions on specific, again, to your state on the local election official's mailing address. If they allow you to send the form in by fax or email, it'll have those addresses for you as well. And then additionally, on a separate PDF link, it'll have the ability to print out the mailing envelope. And the embassy has actually printed out some envelopes, and you have them there in front of you. The first envelope is this one, and that you can use to take the paper version that you've printed out from the web and put that in this envelope. So the ones that the embassy have printed have blanks there for the local election official address. So you'll have that address in your package so you can handwrite it on there. If you have the ability to print out an envelope from your printer at home or your office, then the envelope that prints out will already have the local election official address on there for you, so you don't have to write it. So this says Morris County Clerk, Morristown, New Jersey. So if you're printing it out from your PDF package that you just completed, it'll have the address. These are just some blanks that the embassy staff has on file.
And it will have the postage paid.
Right, so that's the next thing. Right, the postage paid indicia that's on there, if you notice down here it says no postage necessary in the U.S. mail. So if you use this envelope with the indicia and you drop it off at the embassy, it'll go in the DPO or diplomatic post office flow, which goes to Chicago, and there it's dropped into the U.S. mails. So then it's good. If you use your own envelope or you don't have access to this indicia, then you have to put U.S. postage on there if you're going to drop it off at the embassy. If you're going to put it in the Philippine mail or some other mail service, you need to put the Philippine mail stamps on there to get it to the U.S. if you're going to use a Philippine mail. If you're using a courier service, whatever you would normally follow in that regard, if you're using U.S. stamps or whatnot, depending on how your courier is working. Yes, sir?
Where do you drop it off at the embassy?
We have a box. It's a big voting box. And right now it's in the ACS section. You can come in, the guards it doesn't
You
matter.
go in, you
Everything's
go
sealed.
upstairs or the ATM?
It's upstairs, but I think we might
There's a
moving it.
mailbox
We have-
up there.
It's all set up with security.
All right.
Yeah, I think I saw it. I was there on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I think it's where all the windows are. Like window 1, 2, 3, 4.
There's a
box.
like writing counter, and it's a big box. It says vote.
Yeah, vote, send your vote home or something. It says that.
Right.
To get in, I mean, like when I went, I had to show my appointment slip. You know, like I had an appointment, so I had to show my appointment slip.
You can always go, American citizens can always come without an appointment.
Okay.
We have special windows, because things happen that you didn't plan for. So
So
that's
if you just
always.
walk in and show your passport.
Yeah, and because your ballot is in a sealed envelope, the guards know that ballots come in and you don't touch it. They just.
But you have to have your passport.
I'm Amy Reardon, I work in the ACS section also. The walk-in hours are 7:30 to noon every day, so you can, with your U.S. passport, you can just enter, go upstairs to the American Citizen Services unit. The guards won't have anything to say about that. In the afternoon, if you come in, we don't have walk-in hours, so they may have an issue with you coming in. But you can have them call up to us, and if it's just you dropping off a ballot, we'll let you come up.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I was
just
there in the
afternoon.
morning on Tuesday. I mean, I did have an appointment sheet, but they definitely wanted to see it. But I suppose if I didn't have one and I was just saying I want to come in, they probably didn't have me. But since I
And
have a sheet.
they'll allow people with questions for the American Citizen Services Unit to come up also during walk-in hours, even without a U.S. passport, because we get a lot of people who are applying on behalf of their children. So walk-in hours are open to the public. It's just in the afternoon it gets a little tricky.
And the guards are very aware that this is an election year and that people are going to be coming by to drop off ballots. Hopefully, lots and lots of people coming
Now,
by to
is
drop off ballots.
it true that closer to the November election, the box will be closer to the guardhouse, or?
We can move it down to the guardhouse.
Yeah, that would be helpful because like when I was there Tuesday, it took me quite a while. I don't know,
To
maybe
get through.
Take
like
time to get
15,
Right.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
to get from
not for the
market
primaries,
to upstairs.
Not for the primaries, but for the general election, it sounds like they'll be able to do that. Now, that's not true at every embassy or post around the world. It depends on security issues at each location. But I think here, at least for 2012, I think they said they moved it down a few weeks before the election.
Yeah, so that
Um,
you can just come in and drop it off.
We don't keep it down there all the time though, just because it isn't
Correct.
as secure. you know.
Right,
We like
definitely.
people waiting, but
Yeah. Okay, good.
You say we still have to put a stamp, U.S. stamp on it if you drop it off at the U.S. Embassy?
Not if you're using this envelope that has this postage paid indicia on there. You do not have to put stamps on it. If you're using a personal envelope that's blank and you handwrite the name of the local election official on there and you drop it off then at the embassy, then you would have to put stamps on. Or if you're putting in the Philippine mail, you have to put whatever their postage is to get it to the United States. So, okay. Now, the other option, though, that a lot of states have for you to send this form in, to send the registration form in, is to send it in online. And if the state does allow you to do that, there's also a cover sheet that's printed out as part of your package. Now, we recommend using the cover sheet even if you are emailing it in. You think, well, I just need to put the form in there, but they may not be able to tell who you are other than what's on the form based on your email address, which could have some different lettering or combination. So we recommend using the cover sheet because that has your information on it as well as the name of the county, so it's very clear who it is that's sending it and who it is that should be receiving it. Additionally, we recommend a separate transmission for each individual. Even if it's a husband and wife sending it to the same county, we recommend having 2 separate transmissions because a county might get the transmission and they print it out and then they'll say, okay, here's John Doe, registered, done. And they put it aside, not realizing that the wife or the spouse is underneath and they didn't see that. So by having 2 separate transmissions, it's very clear that there's 2 individuals attempting to vote here. There has been cases in the past where that's happened where they both send it in at the same time and only one got registered, and the only explanation is that just they didn't notice it. So we recommend separate transmissions there. Okay, so now let's take a quick walk through the form. We won't go into ad nauseum on the areas. Many of them are very clear as it is, but if you look at the front page of the form, the very top is called classification. So for overseas citizens, usually you'll check either the 3rd or 4th box. If you're overseas for a specific period of time, you're working for a corporation or you're with the Peace Corps or something, and you have a pretty good idea of when you're going to return, you don't necessarily have to provide the date you're returning, but you kind of know when that is. You want to check that 3rd box, which says, I'm a citizen outside the United States and I intend to return. That way they know that you have a kind of a set date. And in some cases, the state will send you a full ballot when you check that box versus if you check the next box down, it says, I'm a citizen residing outside the United States and my return is not certain. There you might be staying over here for 2 years, 10 years. You're not certain when you're going back. And then in that case, there's some states that will only send you the ballot with federal offices on it. Other states send you the full ballot regardless of which box you check. Virginia is the example where you have to actually have a house and own a house in Virginia in order to check that 3rd box down, and they'll send you the full ballot. If you're just using Virginia for that residency purpose, then you would check the 4th box. The language is very worded very deliberately, where it says, my return is not certain. What you do not want to tell the state is that you are never returning or you're overseas permanently, because in order to be declared a resident of that county, they need to have that sometime you had the physical presence there and then the intent to remain or return. And if you tell them, I am not coming back, then they might say, well, we have to take you off the voter rolls because you're not coming back, so you're no longer a resident of our state. So that's why it's worded exactly the way it is. So every once in a while in an election year, we'll get a call from a voter who says, my state won't let me vote, and then if it turns out they send a letter to the state saying, I don't like that administration, I'm never going back to that country, but you have to let me vote anyway, I'm going to vote in this election. But they've said in a signed letter that they're not going back. So then typically we'll intervene and talk to the voter, and they'll send a letter and saying, maybe I will come back, and then they can register. But if you tell them you're not coming back, then they may not be able to legally in the state register you to vote.
But you can certainly pay taxes for the rest of your life.
So
Right?
federal
I'm not
income
going
tax.
back, but I'm going to be paying money every month to the federal government like that. That's the way it is, right?
I'm not here to talk about the IRS. I think the IRS will have a representative out at some point.
We do have.
Taxes are not insignificant.
But there isn't a box that says, I do not intend to return, right? I mean, I don't see.
Correct. That box is not there.
Right.
There was a form a few years ago that did have that on it, and that's been stricken and
Okay.
gotten rid of now.
So, but then what if you check the last one?
Okay.
US citizens have never resided in the U.S. I mean,
Okay,
then
so
obviously you can only use
let's take a.
the federal.
You anticipated the next question, right? Or the next statement. So if you look at this form that says voting residents, overseas U.S. citizens, there's some basic Q's and A's on there about some of the questions that come up with voting residents. Now there's a box toward the bottom of the page there with some states listed in it. These are states that actually have laws passed on their books that say that if you have never resided in the United States but one of your parents has a voting residence or has the ability to vote in our state, you can use that address for voting purposes. So these states actually have laws on the book. The other states are silent on the issue. So if you're a citizen from a state that's not on this list and you've never resided in the United States, then you need to figure out which state it is that you have a tie with. Maybe you've gone home to Minnesota every summer to visit grandma, but you've never really been a resident of Minnesota, but you feel as the state you have the closest tie with. You don't want to check that last box, though, if you're in that situation, because Minnesota doesn't recognize that, and they may not be able to provide you a ballot if you've never resided there. So there, in that case, you'd probably check the box above that that says, I'm outside the United States, and my intent to return is not certain. As long as the individual is comfortable signing the bottom saying that my return is not certain, but this is the state I have the tie with, they can send it in. Now, they shouldn't be just picking and choosing any state in the union or figuring out which state has a swing, which is a swing state or anything like that. They need to pick a state that they have a tie with and they feel that's a legitimate state
But
for
in
voting.
that case, like, if they have grandparents there, but they've never lived there, then would they put the address of the grandparent?
That's probably what they would use. But remember, you don't want to tell folks exactly what address they should use or which state they should be in. They should have that conversation with themselves and figure out which state they have the tie with.
But they need to put some kind of an address, right?
Correct.
I also heard before you
yeah.
can just put a zip code if you don't remember the address, because sometimes people don't
Okay.
remember the exact address.
All right, we're going to get to all those questions in just a minute, or we could talk about it now, but I think I'm going to touch on it in just a moment. So if I don't answer your question, then let me know. But we're going to touch on a lot of those type of issues. Okay, so that's the classification there. Basically, what it does is tell the local election official whether or not to send you the full ballot or just the federal office ballot. That's what they use that block for. So political party, this is where obviously primary elections are where the parties decide who's going to represent their party for the November election. So by putting a party name here, the state will know which party that you have an affiliation with, and they'll send you that party's ballot for the primary election. If you don't want to have an affiliation with any party, then you can leave that blank, and you may not get a primary ballot at all. But in the November election, everyone gets the same ballot regardless. Some states will send you both parties' ballots, and then you pick which one you want to return, and you send that back in. It's more of an open type primary. Other states will only send you the party ballot if you pick the party. If you want to change your party somewhere close to the election, the rules in the guidebook and on the website will let you know how far before the election you would need to make that decision and notify the state in order to get the different parties' ballot for the primary election. Okay, so name is pretty obvious, but if you have changed your name or been married since the last time you registered, the last time you got, is that somebody's making coffee? Yeah, okay. If you, right, so if you change your name or have any other record of a name that you've had prior to this election that you're where you've registered under a different name, provide that. Driver's license number is a great thing to use as long as you're sending the driver's license number from the same state you're sending the form to. If you send the form to California with a Washington State driver's license number, it's not going to help them at all. But even if that number is expired because you've been overseas for so long, you can still use the number because they'll be able to use a state database and research it to help find out that yes, you are a resident or you do have residency claim to that county. Now, the Social Security number, if you don't have a driver's license number, you can use a Social Security number. Most states, it's just the last 4 digits they would request. There are a couple states like New Mexico that do ask for the full Social Security number, which is why you want to make sure you have, when you send this in, you put it in an envelope, or if you use the cardstock version that you use, that there's stickers on there that you can seal it shut. Make sure it's sealed shut so nobody can look inside and see your Social Security number. If you're using that. Birth date is required from every state. They want to know that you are 18 years of age by the date of the election. And another point is that many states allow 17-year-olds to vote in primary elections as long as they'll be 18 by the date of the general election. So it's a good way to get younger folks started in the whole voting process. And once they start, they usually keep on voting for life. Gender is requested by some states. I'm not sure why. There is a race box on there. The race is from the Voting Rights Act. And basically, the Department of Justice requests from some states the racial breakdown of the folks that have registered to vote there to ensure there's not any particular group that are being discriminated against. It's not required in any state. If you leave that blank, there's no state that would reject the form. But if you are from one of the states that asked for it, on the website and in the guidebook, it has the codes to use for the racial designation. Telephone number. That's a good thing to provide, telephone or fax, so they can get a hold of you. Of course, you're 12 hours difference from the East Coast at least, and many hours off. So it may be difficult for them to get a hold of you. But if you are providing a telephone or fax, be sure to put the full telephone number as it would have to be dialed from the U.S. because the local election official may not have ever dialed the Philippines before or even out of the country before. So you want to give them the full number so they know that they can just go to their phone, pick it up, push those numbers, and your phone will ring. So that's what you want to do with that. The second most important thing on this form is the email address. Your signature is the most important, but the second most is the email address, because anything else on this form that's not clear or they need to clarify, they can email you, and then you can email them back with the answer. But if there's no email there, they'd have to either call you or send you a letter, which could take weeks or a while for it to get to you. So having the email so they can contact you is very quick. And I think Catherine had, when she registered in California, they sent her an email back and they needed some clarification on something. She emailed them back 24 hours later. It was all taken care of. So that's really the way that they prefer. And once you get a relationship back and forth with that local election office, they'll tend to send you a lot of other notifications and things as well. This whole process is about that one-on-one relationship between the individual voter and that county election official, so that they know that you're out of the country and that you're keeping them up to date with where you are and where you're located, so they can get stuff to you should an election occur.
So that means we need to leave some off on purpose so we can establish that.
Well, no, when you follow through with the email after you've sent it in, yeah, exactly, yeah. I know that, it really depends. Some of the states, they might know you, or they might know that somebody's overseas and everything, but other states or counties that are very large, they just deal in large numbers, so it really depends on the locality. But some of the folks some of the folks have big maps on the wall where they'll put a pin for where all the voters are from around the world, so they really enjoy communicating with folks and knowing that people are out there voting. So it's something that they like. The ballot receipt method is just basically, how do you want to get your ballot? How would you prefer it? Do you want to get it by email? Do you want to get it by fax or regular mail? There's some people that really do not want to do anything online. They prefer to get the paper and vote it and then mail it back. That way they feel that it's more secure one way or the other, and that's fine. Just put your preference on there so the state will know how it is that you prefer to get it. So here's the voting residence block on the form. So here's where a lot of the questions come in, some of the things that you were just raising a few minutes ago. The reason this is on here, first of all, nothing gets mailed to this address. This address is just so they know a geographic point in the county as to where it was that you lived or where you would be voting if you were still there. That's kind of the idea behind this address. So if somebody lived up here in this part of the county and somebody lived down here, they might get different ballots because there's judicial districts and congressional districts that slice all through. So they want to make sure they send you the same ballot choices that you would have if you showed up at the polling place. So it doesn't matter if you've been gone from this address for 1 year or 30 years, or if it's been knocked down, someone else is living there, or there's a Walmart there now. You can still use that address as long as you're outside the country and continue to have that as your voting residence. You can continue to use that. The states will know where that address is, so they're able to send you the right ballot.
Are you able to change the state? Just change your, like last time I was there, I voted in this county. And now that I prefer, because my party preference may have changed, and I recognize due to redistricting and that my vote would be worthless in this county. And I want to register in this county to vote, so because it might mean more. Can you change your? Well,
you have wherever that geographic pinpoint where that address is, that's where you should be voting while you're overseas. If you go back and you are able to change your legal residence at a time when you're back stateside, then that's fine. But while you're overseas, you can't arbitrarily pick a different place to vote. You got to keep the same address.
Right? I'm just wondering how they know.
I'm from Florida. My vote needs to be voted there.
Yeah.
Thought of it.
Yeah, no, as long as you're overseas, until you go back and establish a residence in a new place.
Last one you used or
Until you go back, you have to go back and
Typically, it's the last address you had prior to leaving the United States, correct?
go rent an apartment for 1 month in this new county.
The physical presence requirement differs from state to state, just like everything else here. There's an asterisk because every state is different. I believe Hawaii, you can step off a plane and go and register to vote on day one. You don't have to have. There's no time frame there. You have to have the physical presence. But other states, they might need 30 days or whatever the case might be. So it really does differ from one state to the other. The mailing address in box 8 needs to be your address now, exactly how it needs to appear. Just like with the phone or fax, you want to put the address down for the Philippines, however it needs to appear, with the postal code, if that goes on the top or the bottom, so that when they put that on the envelope, it'll get to you where you are. Now, even if you're using a P.O. box or some sort of courier service to get your mail, you still want to put this address on there. What you would do in that case is put that P.O. box in the next box down, box 9. So if you're using an El Paso or a California address where all your mail is sent there and then it gets forwarded to a courier service here to be delivered to you for faster mail, then you would put that address, that U.S. box, P.O. box in box 9, but in box 8 you still want to put your address in the Philippines. That way they know that you are actually overseas, because if they just see a U.S. residence, they might think that, oh, this person's not overseas, they don't fall under the act, and they're not covered, so we don't have to send them a ballot based on that, what's on this form. So if you're using the type of courier service, put the Philippine address there and then that U.S. address. Do a lot of folks use courier service to get their mail and whatnot here, or you mainly count on the Philippine mail?
Snail mail usually.
The Philippine mail is pretty dependable, or?
You can mail,
It's registered. I usually do registered.
yeah, the Philippine Postal Service for like 80 pesos. I did this not so long ago. 80 pesos and it would be delivered within a week, they said.
Yeah.
And it worked?
Well, I'm not on the other end to find out.
Oh, okay.
But I always do registered. It doesn't cost very much.
Yeah.
And if I mail in ballots or anything like that, I always just
Okay.
get registered mail. And
The last federal elections, FedEx and some of the other carriers, they did it gratis, so they, public service.
So in some cases, especially in the presidential election year, some of the courier services will provide either free or discounted delivery of ballots back to the states. Right. So that's something you want to keep look out for. I think when that does happen, the State Department generally puts out some information on that. If it, just general information, so people would be aware of it. There's other overseas citizens groups or organizations as well that might be aware of those things that are occurring. Okay. So, and box 9 also can be used for any other information that you feel that local election office would need to know or would be important for them to know to verify that you are a person who can register to vote in that county. Anything else that they might need, if it's a citizenship number or whatever else that they request or that they might want to know. One instance would be with your residence address. If you have a P.O. box or a rural route number, you don't have a regular street address, then you could put in there that you live 1 mile west of Sam's gas station on Route 28. This local election official lives there, so they know where that is, and that helps them to find that geographic pinpoint. And there was one, I think, did you have one other question about residency?
Zip code.
Oh, with the zip code,
No,
right.
I mean, because I had heard before, some people don't remember the exact address,
Oh, right.
the exact street number, but they may know the
So what
zip
we
code.
suggest there is Google Maps or some sort of online, because they'll probably remember, oh, I live across from the elementary school or whatever that is. So if they go to Google Maps and zoom in on that street, they can see the elementary school and they can at least get close to where that
You
is.
can't just put in a zip code.
Generally not, because some zip codes even are divided. Congressional districts are even, divided within a zip code. If they have a 9-digit zip code, then they'll probably be okay. But then,
Even then.
if they know that, then they probably know the rest of the address as well.
Right.
But even then, they really want to know the street address so they know where that house is. I'm not technically, I'm not sure if just a zip code would be enough. Probably not. There are, but just as with anything else, there are some counties or some states that will allow you to put, if you don't know that address and you communicate with them, they might allow you to use the city hall address or something for voting purposes. But once again, it's one of those things you don't want to put out there as guidance, general guidance, because most places you can't do that.
So again, kind of going back to what we were talking about yesterday, if it's someone who's never lived in the United States, then they have to, like you said, try to see what connection they have, like through their parents or something like that.
Right, and that's
Come
up
up
to,
with some kind of an address.
it's up to that individual to kind of figure that out, or
So-
there's so many different scenarios.
Right,
There's
but
no
if-
set
So if
rule.
it's someone who's never lived in the U.S. and there's no way that they could get an address from anyone, then they basically can't vote.
It may be very difficult for them to cast a ballot because they have to be able to show that the ultimate decision is up to that local election official as to whether or not the information provided is enough to demonstrate that they meet the residency requirements or not.
There's no like that, just for voting in the federal election, there's no kind of federal type thing. It all has to go through the states.
Correct. Yes.
So there are some things that are not quite right.
Okay.
And it seems to me that your office or some office ought to be receiving complaints.
Okay.
I mean,
let us know.
There are people
Let's
that
hear.
don't ever go to the, because they born here and they do well here and they have no reason to go back and rent an apartment there. And now they can't vote, but they have to pay taxes. I mean, I think this is revolutionary rhetoric.
Well, that's something you want to take up with your congressperson. Our office carries out the law to ensure that the administration of the voting process is out there and people are able to vote. But if you have those type of issues, certainly your member of Congress, your U.S. senators, your local Congress, they'd be happy to hear that in.
Do a resolution.
So, but if there's issues as far as the process for voting and how to get your request or get your ballot that are not working, then we would love to know that. You can contact me directly or call our office. That's what we want to fix, and we want to make sure that these situations are clarified. So that thing about the P.O. box and the using the courier services. A few years ago, there were a lot of folks in Mexico. And Mexico apparently the mail service there is relatively slow or non-existent, whatever it might be. So they requested that we add some information onto the form so that they could show that P.O. box as well as their address in Mexico. So that was adjusted to the form because we got that feedback. So anything that you guys know about or are having those type of experiences, let us know. And the form will be publicly available for comment next year in 2015. We're going to update it again because of the rules process and the way it gets printed and updated. We have to do it every 2 years at this point. So if there's any recommendations you have for improvements or you see a trend in folks that you're assisting to fill out the form and issues that they have filling it out, from a usability aspect, content aspect, whatever it might be, let us know. We're always open to suggestions for improvement, absolutely. And we also work very closely with the states, as I mentioned, not just with the guidebook, but with their state laws and their regulations. So if there's something that a state has that's really difficult, making it more difficult for their citizens to vote, then you can contact either the state or us, and we can at least talk to them about some of the issues that the citizens from their state are facing, and they can look at changing the laws as well. So in fact, this list that you see here of the states that provide for the citizens that never reside in the U.S., a lot of that came through interaction with our office and us making them even aware that these voters even existed. This is mainly the folks that are 18 or younger that have lived overseas with their parents overseas, folks that, in the Philippines that served in World War II and were granted U.S. citizenship. That's a little different category, but certainly whatever, if there's ideas or suggestions, we're open for those, absolutely. Okay, and then the most important thing, of course, is the signature at the bottom. They need to have that signature on their file so that when they get the ballot in, they can compare that with the signature on the registration rolls to know that you are the same person. That's the way they do identification, authentication of the person sending in the ballot. And then we talked about printing out the envelope and how to send that in.
I saw something on the slide that just previously.
Sure.
The very last one, back one more.
Yes.
Bottom, saying something about some states still require a witness.
Right. So there's no states that require a notary, meaning a seal or a notary to look at that anymore. A state cannot refuse a ballot if and we might have mentioned it before you came in, actually. That's okay, not a problem. But there are a couple states, I think 2, maybe 3, that ask for a witness signature on the bottom. And that could be pretty much anybody. It's not required to be a U.S. citizen or anything. And they just they sign it, and you see there's a little spot there where they can put their signature. But there's only a couple states that ask for that. There's really no opportunity that I know of or that has happened in the past where the states have even followed up to talk to that witness. But there are a couple states, so that's why it's on there. But if you're using the guidebook, it has the requirement is in there. Or if you use the tool online, it'll prompt you to say, do not send this in without a witness signature because it will be rejected without it. So we'll make sure to keep that on there. And we talked about using the cover sheet and separate transmission for each individual. So if you are having a voter registration drive and helping folks fill out the form and they're filling it out by hand, make sure you can read it. That's critical, that you can read it and that they sign it. Anything else, is between the citizen and the state. You don't want to tell them anything about where they should be writing, what they should be writing or not be writing, other than just clarification on what's required. but they want to fill it out the way they feel that they should fill it out and send it in, and then they can work on that with the state. And then again, if they have issues and they can't get it resolved directly with the state, have them call us. We're on, we're at least stateside. We can call them and interact with the state on their behalf to try to help resolve whatever that issue that they might be having is. Okay, and then they'll process it and let you know if there's any issues. Okay, so that's registration. Now, we're in the situation that we talked about earlier where you've requested the ballot from the state, but you're going to be out of country or out of pocket or not able to get email, whatever it might be, in that September, October timeframe when the ballots are going out. So the recourse for that is this federal write-in absentee ballot, and you've got a copy of that in the stack in front of you as well. So the front page of that is the directions on how to fill out the form, but nobody reads directions, so you don't have to worry about that. The second page, you'll notice, of the other form looks just like or very similar to the registration form that we just talked about. Many of the same blocks and questions and requirements are on there. The biggest difference is that on the ballot affirmation form, the affirmation at the bottom has a couple extra statements on there. Because this form is accompanying the voted ballot, it says, I voted this ballot in secret, no one has coerced me into voting this ballot. It's the one that, it says federal write-in absentee ballot on the top. This one, here we go.
Wrong one.
There we go. So this is the front page, and then
I see.
this is the
Okay.
page we're talking about
Thank
now.
you for that.
Sure. So that's why it has a couple extra statements there in the affirmation. And signature is critical on this as well, because then this is the ballot, so they're going to compare this signature with the one that you already submitted earlier with the registration card. So that's the first page. The next part is the ballot itself. Here's where you can write in the names of the candidates of your choice for U.S. President, if it's a presidential election year, or U.S. Senate and U.S. House of Representatives. If you're sending it in late August because you're going to be gone and you don't know who the candidates are because your state hasn't had the primaries yet, you can actually just write in your party name for these federal offices for the general election, and then they'll just put whatever candidate ends up being the choice for that party, they'll count that. Obviously, you don't want to do that for the primary because everyone is a Republican primary, everyone's a Republican. So you can do that. And then there's spaces for other offices as well. If you want to put governor, or you have a relative running for a school board or something, you want to write those in there, you can put that in there as well. So this doesn't have your name on it anywhere. This is just your choices for candidate who you want to vote for. So you take that and you fold it up and put it inside the security envelope. And once again, the embassy has printed up some pre-printed security envelopes for you. The hard or the original copy of the form, the cardstock copy of the form has a security envelope attached to it or as part of it. And if you do have voter registration drive, and put those in the transmittal envelope. So this transmittal envelope is a little bit different than the one that was printed out for the federal postcard application because it has a spot there. It says ballot enclosed for blank election. It has a spot to put a date for the election. That's because if you send this form in for New York, and New York hasn't had their primary yet, and this ballot arrives 2 days before the primary, they may think it's for the primary election. And they don't realize that your intention is to send it in for the November election. So if you put November election, they'll know to put it aside, and then they'll wait until the November election to actually process it. So that's why you do that. So you
can use either one of them.
You could use either one. It's better though if you're.
I mean, this one, if you're doing absent, this one I understand.
That's, yeah, exactly.
But
yeah.
if I lose this, I can.
You absolutely could. Yep. And when you go to our website and use the tool, we have a tool on our website for this federal write-in ballot as well as the registration form. The ballot envelope will be provided for you, and it's that one that has the election date on it. So that you always have that available to you as well on our website, as opposed to having to do this. That's if you have the ability to print out envelopes on your printer. That not everyone does that or has the ability. It's not easy always to print it out and get it on the right side of the envelope or right side up, and sometimes it's on the sticky side and everything else. So what happens is the state has this now. They get it, and then election night comes up, and they look and they say, okay, John Doe is registered voter. He didn't show up at the polls, because some people happen to be stateside at election time, and they'll just go to the polls and vote. But he didn't show up at the polls. We sent him a ballot, but he didn't return it. But we do have this federal write-in absentee ballot. So what they'll do is they'll verify the signature at that point and say, yes, this is who he says he is, and then they'll separate your identity from the voted ballot, and they'll put this in a pile to be counted, so you still have that secret ballot. And the secret ballot is ensured by state constitutions, a state law. It's not a federal guarantee for secret ballot, but that will allow that to occur. So,
If you don't have that envelope,
if you don't have this envelope, you take any envelope that you want, or origami another piece of paper around it and tape it shut, and write ballot envelope, security envelope, or something else on there. Anything that seals this inside is good to guarantee that it's as long as you can fit this along with your other information into another outer envelope, that's fine. That'll work.
What is we drop by at the U.S. Embassy?
So if you're going to drop it at the U.S. Embassy, it's the same rule as with the other form, because both of these will be inside this outer envelope. So it'll have that postage indicia on there. So as long as it has that indicia, you can drop it on there without putting postage on it. But if you're using your own envelope, same rule, and you handwrite the local election official address on there, but there's no postage on there, you need to either put the U.S. postage on if you're dropping it at the embassy, or put the Philippine postage if you're putting in the Philippine mail.
So, and is there a way to, I mean, I know if you go through this website, you could print out the envelope, right?
Yes, exactly.
But is there not any other way to print out that postage paid thing?
Yes, in fact, it's a separate link on the site to the envelopes themselves,
Okay.
So that you can print out the full envelope, and you all probably used it when you printed these out. So if you're going to have a voter registration drive, now remember, we can send you hard copies of the original form that has everything all inclusive in one form. It comes in a pack. The form is a card. There's a multi-page form that's joined at the top, and it's got all these pieces put together in one form, and we can send you a few hundred of these or whatever you need for voter registration drives or whatever.
But on the website, there's a link to print out the
Correct.
envelope with the thing.
Yes, that's correct. Now, for the federal write-in ballot, it's a larger scale. You know, it's this size as opposed to the smaller envelope size. So you could put that on if you have a larger envelope like this, you can put it on, tape it on as long as that is visible and it's not covered up when you drop it off, then you'll be able to use it.
So we go to within the website, go to the federal write-in ballot section of the website?
I'm not 100%. Yeah, there's a spot on the website for forms, and you'll see the forms there, and you can print them off either in PDF blank, and there'd be a spot for the mailing envelope on there as well. I'm not exactly sure the exact placement of it. You can either search on it, or if you're not able to find it, send me an email and I'll send you a link.
I think last time, like when I got my ballot, my absentee ballot, I got it as a PDF file, and I don't think they included any kind of envelope thing. So then I just put it in a regular envelope, but then, then I had to deal with the stamp issue.
Right. Yeah. So it is on there. It should be part. So when you go through the process and get to that last page, there'll be two links. One link for the ballot for this page that you sign, and the other one with the ballot. And then there'll be another link further down for the envelope. And the reason why they're separate is that the envelope, sometimes you need to load it in a manual feed tray as opposed to the regular feed tray with the regular paper. But if you have any issues, or if we can send you the PDF or whatever, just don't hesitate to let us know. We don't want.
I mean, actually, what happened is we also collected all these ballots from a bunch of people, and so we had this big pile, and most of them weren't in the postage paid envelope.
Okay.
So American Citizen Services was very kind to print all the ballots and repackage everything, which I felt bad. Like, we could have done that. So this time,
so they printed them off with the.
They printed like new
with the
envelopes,
indicia,
and
then hand wrote the address in there, right? Because they can't open anything,
right.
But they could stick that into another envelope.
But now that we know, we can do it ourselves.
Exactly.
If people show up with blank envelopes, we can just print a new envelope.
Right, or have a supply on hand so that you're ready to go. Perfect. Yeah. Or if you order a supply of the original version of the forms, you can use the envelope that's part of that form as well. So that's already on there for you, and it's already done without having to print it out or worry about the paper size or taping it on anything. It's interesting to go to the election office in the States and see the way that people, duct tape and staple and everything else, and somehow they make it through the mail and they get there. Hopefully it's arrived on time. So now you may be wondering that earlier I said that some states allow you to submit the voted ballot electronically as well. So if you're going to submit it electronically, you got this sheet, and then you've got your voted ballot. So you're going to scan that in, make a PDF of it, and email it in, or you fax it in, however it is it's convenient for you. And the local election official prints out the PDF, and then they have this and this, and it's not secret, right? Because they can see your name and they can see who you voted for. So they have procedures in place at the local election office where they're going to verify they got the complete package of the ballots. And this, once again, if you're sending multiple ballots to the same election office, send them each as a separate transmission for the same reason. So they'll see they have the complete ballot. Then what they'll do, and they have procedures in place, so they'll take the voted ballot part and put that in some sort of envelope and attach it to your ID, and then they'll put that aside, just like it came in through the mail, and then until election day. Then they'll verify that you are, they didn't receive another ballot from you, and then they can separate that and count that. So now, let's say you've done that, you've sent this in, at least you got those federal offices voted for, you can head on out wherever you're going and not have to worry about it. But on your way out the door, you notice that the state ballot is in the mail, and it just came. The federal law allows that you can vote that ballot as well, because it might have some constitutional issues or referenda on there that you weren't aware of when you voted this federal ballot, so that you're able to vote that and send that in as well. The state will not count both ballots. They'll only count, as long as they both arrive in a timely manner, they're only going to count one. Usually it'll be a state ballot that they'll count. So they'll go down the list and say, John Doe didn't come in person, we sent him an absentee ballot, and we got his absentee ballot. So then they're going to count that, check him off as having voted, and this ballot will just be set aside and not used at all. But they do want to have this, the federal law specifically stated that you'd be able to do that, so it would be a more complete ballot. Okay.
Imagine this happening here.
We just talked about a lot of these different uses of the federal write-in absentee ballot. Once again, if the state does have a tool for ballot completion, some states actually have a tool where you're able to go onto their website and get to the PDF, and you can actually click on the choices of the candidate that you want. So when you print it out, it'll print the names on there for you. Additionally, our tool that we have on our website, when you get to the section for the ballot piece, that allows you also, for the federal offices, we'll have those candidate names on there. We work with the states to get the updated list of the federal candidates, and we'll have that on there so you can make those choices. So when you print it off, it'll already have the names of candidates on the sheet for you. Some people aren't comfortable doing that. They think that maybe we're going to record their vote or something. So you can also just print it off blank and then handwrite it on there, whatever you'd like to do. It's up to the individual how they want to utilize that. But if the state does have a tool on their website, we'll have that listed first. Because once again, we want you to have that direct interaction with the state. Now, after you send your ballot in, you can also use to check the status of my voted ballot. Many states have that, again, where you can find out if they actually got your ballot in time and whether it was counted or not. You can also, if your state does not have that, you can send them an email, and they will let you know that whether they did or did not receive your ballot in a timely manner, and whether or not it was counted for the election. So they will tell you that. They can't tell you that your vote for candidate A was counted. They can tell you that your ballot was counted because they don't know who you voted for, because your identity is not together with the voted ballot. So this is that, these are like, if you're voting for the candidates, you want to put the candidate names in there, these are the little radio buttons next to the candidate choices that you would see on the online version of that federal write-in absentee ballot. And we talked about how to load the envelope, the security envelope, and then your name into the outer envelope. And we talked about how to send the information in. Now, we do have, we talked about earlier, listed in the back cover of the guidebook, our toll-free fax number. So you can fax that in toll-free from the Philippines if you want to fax your ballot to that local election office. And all the election office fax numbers are both in this guidebook for every county in the country, as well as on our website. So if you use the website and print out the complete ballot package from there, you'll be able to see that fax number and email address, as well as that cover sheet will be included in that. And we talked about if you get your state ballot after you have already voted the federal ballot, that's okay. So that's the basic process. The two forms that are available to you and some of the issues that can arise as you are completing that process. If you're helping others, remember, you don't want to tell people where they should be voting. You want to guide them through the process and have them make those decisions and work with their local election official. And then if there are issues that arise, try to resolve that directly with the election official. If not, have them call our office and we can act as the intermediary there at home. The next few slides, and this we'll wrap up here in about 10 minutes or less, are just about voter awareness and some of the ways to get information out. Through the U.S. Embassy, they have, in the last 10 years, started using the Warden District. The Warden District folks, wardens get the information out that comes on voting from our office to the State Department headquarters, to the embassy or consulate, to the warden, and then out to the American citizens on that list. Traditionally, that list was just used for emergency situations, a natural or a wartime type information to say, tell people to get to the airport or get to the embassy. Now they're using it for other information as well. Our website also has the ability for you to sign up for state-specific information. So if you're from Connecticut and you want to know what's happening in Connecticut for absentee voting, you sign up for our link, and any releases that we put out for Connecticut, you'll get that. But you don't care about what's happening in California or other states. You just want Connecticut information. So that is another thing you can use on our website. There's two major weeks that we push through the Department of Defense and also through the Department of State worldwide. And one is Overseas Citizens Voters Week, and that's in the July 4th Independence Day timeframe. Typically, Americans have some sort of congregation where they get together to celebrate at that point. So we recommend that people have a table set up, have a registration drive, whatever the case might be. People might not want to sit down for 15 minutes and fill out a form at that event because their kids want cotton candy or whatever else. So we recommend having these cards, or you can go to our website and print out one of these Q's and A's type sheets and then put your name on the bottom. I don't know what happened to mine. Or anything that you want to produce yourself, use the information that's on our website and have that sitting out so people can take it, and then when they get home, they'll find this card in their pocket and they'll say, oh yeah, that's right, I got to go to the website and register to vote. So those are great tools to have. But the main point of that Overseas Citizens Voters Week, excuse me, is that for folks who haven't registered yet, who haven't sent in the form yet that year, that's really getting to be the time when they want to make sure they get the form in, because they're only a few weeks away from when the ballots start going out for the November election. I've got some water right here, thanks. They may have, I guess early July, you're just 8 or 9 weeks away from when the ballots go out. So if they haven't registered yet, there'll still be time for that local election official to resolve any issues or questions that they might have prior to the ballots going out. So that's the main point of that week. The other week is this absentee voting week, and it's just like it sounds, voting week, because by late September, early October, when we hold that event, you should have your state ballot already in hand. It should have gotten to you either by email or by mail, because they're going to send it out starting 45 days prior to the election. So you have that ballot. We encourage people, as soon as they get it, to send it in as soon as possible and take advantage of as much time in getting it back as they can. There may also be a few people who haven't done anything yet that in the year. They haven't registered, they haven't requested a ballot. Remember, that 30-day time frame is the longest that any state has for requesting a ballot, so they may still be able to eke out a request there. And there's about half the states that would allow them to register even a little later. They may luck out, but you don't want them to count on luck as far as being able to get their ballot in or have their ballot counted. So they want to do that, and if they don't have their ballot from their state, then we recommend two things. One is that they send in that federal write-in absentee ballot right then. Don't wait, try to contact the state and go back and forth for a week. Send the federal write-in ballot right then, and then contact the state as well and say, hey, I haven't gotten my ballot yet. And if they end up getting it, then they can go ahead and vote that as well. But at least the one vote will be in, and they know that it'll get there in time to be counted. Because as far as the absentee ballot deadlines are concerned, for about half the states, it's required that the ballot be in the polling place by the close of polls on election day. So there's no extra time allowed for those states. That the local election official has, when the polls close at Eastern time or whatever time that they're on, at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock on election night, they have to have your ballot in their hands. Otherwise, it will not be counted. If it comes in later that night or the next day or 2 weeks later, it will not be counted. Now, there are about half the states or so that do allow ballots to come in after election day and still be counted in that year. However, it has to be postmarked, signed, and out of the hands of the voter by the day of the election. They want to know that you haven't waited to hear that your candidate was losing and then try to send the ballot in after the election. So they will allow you to do that. But once again, you don't want to count on the state allowing for that to happen. So lowest common denominator, again, the best rule of thumb for everybody is to have your ballot in by the close of polls on election day, and then it's just nice if you're able to do that. So either a postmark on the letter, a consular seal, or something from the embassy that you've dropped it off there, something to show them that it's out of your hands and they'll be able to count it. Am I blocking you? Did you have a question or? So, okay, where did I put the pointer? Over here. And you can have these copies. We can send you copies of these slides if you want to use them. You want to do a training in your organizations or with your folks as well. You can. They're PowerPoint. You can change them around or put some lead-in slides with your organizational information on it. So there's no problem with that either. We're happy to provide those. So these are just some pictures of people having activities around voting weeks. You know, they have a table set up or a tent at an outdoor fair or in some place where Americans are congregating, so folks can fill out the forms. The good thing is, you know, when the embassy or consulate is involved, is that if you fill out your form while they're there, you can hand it to them, and they can take it back, and you don't have to then make a separate trip to the embassy to drop it off yourself. So we have posters that are available. In fact, did we put any of the posters out? I don't know. They're in this too. So you can take a few with you. You can also order some from us. We can send them to you. This year's posters look like this banner that's here, except they're a poster size. And of course, the PDFs are on our website as well, so you can print out smaller ones. If you have a billboard or a bulletin board in a place where Americans congregate, you can just put up the smaller version. Here they are, or even a smaller version that you can print out from your printer as well. And then you're able to utilize those. There's a spot on the bottom where you can put your contact information. In fact, any of the information or materials that you have that you're handing out, you can add your information to it so people know how to get local help assistance first, and then come to us or go to our website for the more general assistance. So if anyone is a federal employee working for the U.S. government, there are specific rules about what you may or may not do as a federal employee regarding political campaigns or supporting campaigns. And that's all listed on the Office of Special Counsel website. It's covered under the Hatch Act. Continuity folder is just for overseas citizens groups. It's just kind of a good idea to have some of the latest news releases, the guidebook and whatnot, so that if you move on to a new organization or leave the country, the person with your organization that follows through will have that information. But pretty much these days, our website is kind of an online continuity folder because we have always the latest materials and all the latest up-to-date information on our website. So for assisting voters, there's a tab up here called Voting Assistance Officer and another one here called Help a Voter, and they'll take you to the PDFs of all these pamphlets that we have. We also have some fact sheets that we've produced. They kind of follow our overall theme. There's one about the federal write-in absentee ballot. There's one about the federal postcard application, one about myths and realities in voting. These are all on our website as well. You can print those out and put some local information on there if you'd like. And any of this stuff, as I said before, like the myths and realities, if you have a weekly email that goes out to your membership, just put a myth and reality every week in there, copy paste it, and then put your local contact information in fap.gov, and you're set to go. And you don't have to rewrite or come up with new material. So utilize it as much as you'd like. That's where we're just talking about the different outreach materials. So we talked about the overall process. Your role in helping other voters is just to make sure that they're able to understand that they can vote, what the basic process is. You don't have to be an election expert. You just want to know where to go should problems arise as you go through the process. And
sorry, can you just go
yes.
back, I think, one or two slides?
Sure. This one or this one?
So it's fvap.gov/VAO.
Correct. But if you click on either of these two areas, that'll take you right to the VAO section, and all that's on there. We could also mail you, if you'd like, a CD-ROM with everything on there. If you have a slow internet connection or whatever the case might be, we're happy to do that as well. We want to provide the information to you in whatever way we can. But easier than that, we can also just send you, these cards come in a big long box of 500, this big, and we can mail that to you, and then you'll have them for whatever purposes. Likewise with that pamphlet. I keep putting them down and not knowing where I am. The brochure, the trifold, if you have a display or some sort of rack that has brochures on it, you can do that. And these are the standard size, 8.5 by 11 type things you can put on. You know, there's those. Different offices have different kind of racks you can put these on. The guidebook. We also have some CD-ROMs of the guidebook. In the back of the guide, there's also a CD-ROM that just has the guide on it. It's a PDF version of the guidebook, but remember that it's accurate as of September 2013. But it is there, another resource that's available.
When were these books printed?
Last fall, September 2013.
Same as the CD?
Same thing, right. But the online, there's a version of a full PDF of the guidebook on our website as well, and that would have been updated if there's any changes or address changes on there. And we have articles written as well that we can provide to you, and we have links from our website or tools on our website. You can put a block on your website with Send Your Vote Home that will link to our website. We have lots of online tools in that regard. We have a Facebook account and a Twitter account that you can send your pictures. If you have a voting drive and you have a picture of your folks set up at a table, you can send us that. We'll post that and say, look what the Americans are doing in the Philippines, and then people will see that. After the election on Facebook, you can put an I voted sticker. It's almost like going to the polls and getting a sticker, but you post it on your Facebook account to show that, hey, I'm Americans overseas and I voted. So there's a lot of those type of fun resources. Different people use different things. We try to have something for everybody so that everyone has a connection or has a way of connecting with the site and spreading the word. And so all those resources we just talked about, you see that they all start with the same thing, ff.gov. And they're all on, all the forms and everything are on there, and here our contact information is here. But of course, it's on the back cover of the guidebook as well, and plastered all over everything that you have in front of you. So there shouldn't be any problem with finding the website. I give you my card too with my name if you want to call me directly. But we're happy to assist you, and that's what we're here for. And I can take any other questions you might have. Did you want to say anything on behalf of the embassy before we wrap up? Does anyone else want to have anything to say about issues or anything specific to the Philippines that you've faced in the past that might help the other voters in the room to know of situations specific to here? If not, like I said, if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to take it, and I appreciate you coming out. Thank you very much.
Yes. Just from the standpoint of American Chamber of Commerce, we really want to say thank you for today. I mean, this is really cool.
Very good.
I think that what blows me out of the water is how efficient you are. I mean, I compare this to my Filipino wife registering to vote in the Philippines and that type of situation. But I think from America's Chamber, I'm just really very impressed at how detailed this is, how knowledgeable you personally as a presenter was to give us this information, right? I mean, it's amazing. I didn't know this was available here. So I really, from AmCham and Deb Hitchell's standpoint, I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for hosting this as well.
I was disappointed Bob didn't do the presentation. So.
I wrote the script.
Oh, you wrote the script.
I would
Yes,
just
sir.
want to echo what he said and say I very much appreciate all of this. And it has answered several questions that I had unanswered.
For years.
Oh, great.
And I've been trying to find these answers. And I think I can pass on this information to others, which is a good thing.
Definitely, yeah.
And then I would say, I don't know what it is that the embassy can do, but I think the embassy should still do something more in that block between July and September. I mean, we will try so hard to reach out, but it's not easy. You know, it's like inviting someone to come on in and have their tooth pulled. And they will say, yes, I'm coming, and then they don't come. So we need an activity that gets some press, I think, and gets people a little bit motivated. And that's certainly beyond my
Yeah, we talked
or
about
Lisa's
doing a
effort. I mean, we
press
can't do
event.
this on our own very well. But I'm not going to tell you what you need to do.
Well, so in
Well,
the
we talked about
Philippines,
doing a press event. I mean, the
Okay.
last 2 years ago, we had sort of a press conference type thing with the embassy and Democrats abroad and Republicans abroad that got some press coverage. So if we could do something like that again, I think that would be helpful.
What's the status in August? Is it like some countries where everyone's gone, or people hang around? It's not some countries, you know, you
August is
can't.
better than July.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and that's
August people are pretty much arriving.
so you don't, you know,
But
that
there's
that
also
emphasis
such a
week.
huge number, of Filipino Americans who, you know, are here all the time, and
Right.
that's a big untapped
An enormous number
group of people, and most of them don't have any idea how to vote. They've never voted
Right.
before. I mean, I'll sit around with like other parents at my kids' school. They're all Filipino, and somehow this came up, and they were all like, "Oh yeah, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a U.S. citizen." I didn't know, but they had no clue how to vote. So I think there are lots and lots of people out there like that we're trying to also reach. But yeah,
Do you have a booth at the 4th of July?
Yeah.
Does the embassy come out or
Yeah.
do something at the 4th of July?
Yeah, we'll have a booth at the Embassy 4th of July party, and I'm gonna be reaching out to you guys to see if we can do something.
And I also suggest you do it in Cebu. Theirs is gonna be on July the 5th, I think, in Cebu. So if we could reach out to, maybe Bob and I talked about it, maybe we could reach out to MCHAM Cebu and try to reach those also. The other one would be, of course, the international school. I would like to keep a lot of these copies. I've got a blank, fairly empty cabinet space. I'd like to keep some of these in my office just to, you know, make available to the Elks upstairs. Somebody says, I don't know if they're different store parts, but we can store it down here. And then people know if you need to come by, if you need information, the chamber has some of this material available. So
Yeah,
we can do
and
that.
I don't think they're planning to take anything back to the embassy that's here, so you can, it's all for you guys to take and use as you need.
Whenever we have an event, we might be reaching hundreds, like at the 4th of July party. But there are probably more than 100,000 American citizens here.
300.
Probably 300,000. So, you know, big deal. We reached 200 and 300.
But half of those, we don't want them to vote now.
I mean, we can
And
reach,
that's where the media-
in a great event, we can reach less than 1%.
That's what
Right.
Yeah.
That's why, you know, a television
A lot of
event,
them.
Yeah.
a news event,
Yeah.
has so much better.
So if any existing channels that you all have that go out to American citizens, if you have newsletters, email, any meetings, organizational meetings that you have,
Well, during all that.
copy paste our stuff and stick it all out there,
It'll
because
still reach just hundreds.
No, but the media, I think that's where.
Yeah.
you know,
Therefore, we
press
need a
conference
medium.
and-
That's
yeah.
what I'm saying.
Evan and AmCham might be able to reach out to the press and have a couple of briefings and get it out for the Phil-Ams that are dual nationality.
Yeah.
And I think also,
Any, you know,
we'll establish this on a website, then we'll put it in our magazine, it is available on our website. I was talking to Don earlier about that. Make sure we get a copy possibly of the video or something, we can post on the website. And then the big thing that is, then let people know it is on the website, so they can pay attention.
and there was a lady here earlier that I think writes your magazine or something.
That's,
Yeah, so she has my info, and we're going to send her some stuff some articles to put in the magazine as well.
Perfect.
So, and any other, like I said, magazines, publications, and the internet is a good resource too for folks who have Facebook accounts. We try to build up a social community in areas so people are able to reach out to each other that way and connect. And you know, once you connect with one, then they connect with two, and then all their friends see that, and then another person connects, and then all their friends see it. So it is somewhat exponential, but only for people who are using those type of social media devices. But we have, you know, those type of resources available as well.
good stuff.
So great. So there is an evaluation form at the bottom, the last page in your packet. If you could take just a couple minutes to fill that out and share your thoughts. This U.S. taxpayer dollar sent me here. So if you think it's worthwhile, great. Otherwise, if you think it could all be done online or whatever, if you just share your thoughts on there, I appreciate it. Great. So thank you again. Thank you again.